Hello, everyone. Welcome back. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about paranormal experiences. And today's guest speaker would like to remain anonymous. So, yeah, here she is.
Hi, y'all. So, the reason I want to remain anonymous, in case I ever become famous, I don't want this to come back and surface, but I do want to explain something that used to plague me, and I didn't know, and it was paranormal, and I didn't realize that it affected every aspect of my life. And looking back on my life, it's insane that I didn't realize. And I could have made so many changes. I could have sought help sooner. But do I regret the way my life happened? No, because I think it made me the person who I am today, which I like myself a lot better now than I did before. So all good things, but still, if you know, you know. It's one of those things. So I spent a few hours putting together a story that I'm going to read, and it is 100% true, zero embellishments, zero exaggerations. It just is what it is. And we are, you know, going to kind of go a little more in depth after I finish reading.
Yeah,
So,
if you are experiencing any of these things, to know that you're not alone and this stuff is real.
and if you do relate to anything we're going to talk about today, there's a chance that you should seek help. And if I did not seek help, I probably would have been stuck in the same cycles that I have been my whole life. So if you resonate with anything we're about to talk about, just go for it.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So throughout my 32 years, I've experienced a handful of events with multiple entities. One plagued me for almost a decade, and I wholeheartedly believe it sent a ripple effect into all aspects of my life, wreaking havoc in its wake. And while it's somewhat unconventional, I think it's best that I start the story at the end so that when I tell you how it all began, it will tie a metaphorical bow around the whole thing. It was the year 2018 when it all ended. I was at the time in a relationship with a guy who I later came to learn was a textbook narcissist. Over the course of our relationship, he had successfully alienated me from my friends, family, and caused me enough mental distress that even my performance at work began to suffer. I'd show up to work after crying all night, puffy-eyed, lacking all emotions. The reason I tell you this is to kind of paint a picture of what my life was looking like at the time. And if you've ever been with a narcissist, you know what that's like. It's draining. So my colleague noticed my behavior was off that day and asked me what was going on, if I were all right. And the moment she asked me this, I had a meltdown. She and I were relatively close, we're like work friends, and she was older and wiser than me. I told her about the recent ordeal with my relationship, but I also ended up spilling the beans about something I'd never shared with another soul to that day. And this is what I told her. Several years ago, I started to notice that whenever my life would get tough, whether I hated my job or was in a bad relationship or money was tight, you name it, I would start to experience paranormal activity that only I would see, feel, and hear. However, it was only noticeable when I was under the influence of marijuana. I would smoke, my heart rate would accelerate, and I would hear a voice inside my head that was not my own. And it would tell me horrible, demeaning things about myself, and there was nothing I could do to shut it up apart from prayer. One time, it was so loud that I couldn't hear what my friend was saying to me 3 feet from my face. I had to excuse myself and lock up in the bathroom and simply pray until it was quiet. This went on for years until I finally quit smoking. Problem was, it was now happening while I was not under the influence of marijuana. So I figured that that's it. I'm officially losing my mind. The voice belonged to a man, and it sounded ancient, angry, and just so disgusted with me. Honestly, it was fucking terrifying. I was hearing it in the moment my colleague had asked me if I were all right that fateful day. She listened, comforted me, and then said something I was absolutely not expecting. She told me she was a Wiccan and could help me. Her sisters, chosen family, lived an hour away and that she could take me there that week to perform a cleansing. I was a bit skeptical, but whatever I had done up to this point hadn't worked, and I've tried everything except for treatment for possible schizophrenia. So needless to say, I was desperate to be rid of this and agreed to try it. The moment I stepped foot on the stairs of the home of her sisters, my body was vibrating. There's no other way to put it. It's as if it's as if whatever was dwelling inside me knew its time was up. The eldest sister took my hand and walked me to the back of the home where a room was set up for the ritual. By the time they laid me down, my body was just shaking uncontrollably. Honestly, I was scared. They put my feet in a bucket of water with herbs. They prayed over me, and the ritual began. Um, Healing stones were laid on my chakras, sending frequency deep into my bones. As they yelled at the entity, I truly felt my body had lost control of itself. And this went on for a while. And when they were finished, we just lay and sat in silence, breathing heavily as if fresh off of a battlefield. Once we were all calmed, the sisters told me to dump the bucket of water across the street, and they would tell me everything once I was back in the house. Mind you, I had not told them about anything apart from the voice. They went on to tell me that this entity had taken control over me, my body and mind, and had been with me for a few years. It negatively influenced my outlook on life, destroying my self-esteem, manipulating my decisions, and swaying my judgment, causing me to, in turn, lead a life full of misfortune, burden, and distress. This was harrowing to hear, as I've always had the spirit of a fighter and was able to pull myself out of these shitty situations in life, but it was never easy. And, my friends always joke that I was like the luckiest, unlucky person they knew, and it was true. However, extremely exhausting because I'd never catch a break. It was then that I asked why this entity came after me, and I was given the answer that shook me to my core. It was all finally making sense. It was an ancient American Indian male spirit, and it was angry with me as I had desecrated its land, its sacred burial ground. You see, when I was 19, I briefly lived in New Jersey. It is well known that this state is one of the most haunted, with vast cemeteries and holy grounds. Unfortunately, as the towns grew, the lines blurred, and many didn't know what was where. This was the case with the home of one of my friends. My friend 1, and I went over to friend 2's house to play cards, watch TV, etc. Friend 1 rolled up a blunt, and friend 2 asked us to walk to the backyard. It was nighttime and dark, and until he turned the lights on at the shed all the way at the edge of his property. We sat on the warm summer ground, smoking, laughing, being idiots. I took a couple of puffs and rejected the rest since I'm a lightweight. And within a minute, I started to feel very strange. Not stoned, but just strange. You know the way you feel when you're stoned, you know other things. It's not the same. It's important to tell you now that I used to suffer from seizures caused by an improper weaning off of a medication. Everyone who knew me either knew I had them or had seen me have one, and therefore knew what to do in case it happened. The friends I was with that night were also aware of the seizure, so when I told them I felt like one was coming on, they were on alert, ready to help. Friend 2 went and got me some juice and water, and friend 1 just kept his hand on my shoulder, reassuring me that everything would be okay. Friend 2 said he could help me go inside and ask for help from his mom if that would make me more comfortable to be around a woman. And I said no, as it just typically lasted 30 seconds. And worst case scenario, I would need new pants. If you know about seizures, you know what I'm talking about. So to tell his mom only then. Except this didn't feel like the onset of a seizure. Usually I had this warm, anxious rush roll through my body, what some people call an aura. And within 10 seconds, I'd experienced the episode. But this time just kept passing since the initial rush, and I was only feeling weaker and more tingly. And about a minute or so into this, I started to do jumping jacks in an attempt to shake it off and lie down and get the blood back to my head. Nothing was happening, and nothing was helping. And while still laying on my back, I said to them, I feel like something is draining my energy. The following part is what I was told by friend 1, so I was no longer present for it. This is a retelling. For a moment, I was quiet and then asked how I was doing. I jumped to my feet so fast that it scared the both of them, friend 2 coughing from exhaling the smoke so fast. I stared at him for a long moment, and he looked over to friend 1 with the what the fuck look. Right as I started muttering something in a language they did not know. Granted, English is my second language, so it could have been my native tongue, and they wouldn't have known the difference. And I wish it ended there for them, but unfortunately, that was the moment that I started to bend over backwards, unnaturally for my body. My friend said that it looked like my back was breaking. Friend 1 jumped towards me, trying to catch me because he thought I was falling. holding my back with one hand and my head with the other. And he told me he started to pray and channel love to me, while friend two stood frozen in shock and fear from what he was witnessing. Friend one said that when he pulled me up a little bit and saw my eyes up close, he realized my pupils were so dilated that the green irises were completely gone. From my eyes and my facial expression, I didn't even look like me. I was still muttering, and the anger was exuding, and it felt unholy. Mind you, from the moment that I had said I thought I was about to have a seizure to now, it had been maybe 5 minutes. And so friend one kept praying and staring at me until my eyes rolled back into my head. And it was then that I felt like a bag of bricks back onto the ground. So then I came to, and they were dragging me to the car with each one of my arms across their shoulders. My feet were completely numb, not working, and I was having a hard time breathing. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my ears. When I asked them what happened, they just kept looking at each other, not me, and just stuttering over things like, well, we just need to get you some food, or let's get some pizza and we'll talk after. And while eating pizza and chugging water, friend one told me what I wrote above. And I remember how loud the silence was afterwards and how friend two didn't speak nor look at me at all. When I asked him, is this true? And he just stared at friend one and said nothing. He looked scared. And friend one said that he did not think that that was a seizure. Well, no shit. And a couple years later, I reconnected with friend one. We were hanging out and he offered me a smoke, which I politely refused, stating that I did not want a repeat of that night. So we kind of chuckled wryly at this. And I wanted him to tell me again what had happened and whether friend two would want to talk about it. And he explained that friend two had gone through a major change in life. From a daredevil pothead, he became a pious, law-abiding, God-fearing man. And he figured that that night he saw something that he couldn't explain with his previously atheist ways. Given the scare of a lifetime was enough for him to turn his life around 180 degrees. And friend one also told me that the property, friend two's house where we were that night, was later found to have been built right next to, if not slightly over, an American Indian burial ground. The ground where the shed we hung out was by, the ground where I smoked, did jumping jacks, and lay on the grass in anticipation of a seizure that would never come. Well, the fact that I never realized that this ancient spirit stayed with me all these years is still absurd. It had dwelled within me, affecting my everyday life, seemingly as a form of payback for my disrespectful childish behavior. And when the Wiccan sisters were telling me this, I felt like the puzzles of my life was for once making sense, like the pieces were just fitting together for the first time. And with that, I could feel almost an end of an era dawning, the end to my cyclical struggles, whether financial, romantic, familial, and most importantly, mental. The ritual was performed over 6 years ago, and while I still experience paranormal activity around me from time to time, I know the ancient spirit is not the culprit. I have never heard the ominous voice inside my head since.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's really important that, people share their messages. As I learned in a Tony Robbins event, your mess is
Mhm.
your message, and it can
Amen.
help so many people. So I am just curious, was this the first time you ever experienced anything like this?
So, no, my first time I was about 9 years old, and it was a really, really terrifying experience. And, I have told some people this experience, and they're like, oh, you were just 9 years old, and you're young and impressionable, and you were scared. But it was so much more than that. And I feel like people are really quick to dismiss or maybe rationalize an
Hmm.
experience
Yeah.
rather than just sit and listen to you
Yeah.
and explain, like, okay, well, okay, that cannot be explained. That, and I understand that in the mind of a skeptic, or even if you're not a skeptic and you are a believer,
Yeah.
you still don't want it to be real, so you look for answers elsewhere as to why this could have
Totally.
happened, right? And I get that.
Hmm.
But then to so surely to say, like, no, there's no way that happened, it's not just dismissive of the person telling the story. It's just dismissive of the world we know
Yeah.
exists.
And that's where it all starts.
Correct.
You're told that that didn't happen,
You're
or
crazy. Yeah. It's like,
yeah.
no, bro. Like, I know what happened to me,
Yeah.
like, sure, I was 9 years old, but you know what? it's it is real.
Yeah,
It
100%.
it is proven that it's real.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about proven as in like the paranormal ghost shows, like, please, that's all orchestrated, you know what I mean? But there are people, regular people like me, like us,
Yeah,
who will tell you this stuff. But the thing is that we're not just going to tell any Joe Schmo. We're selective about this, right?
yeah,
Because if we're revealed to the wrong person, oh, you're crazy, like, oh, you're schizophrenic. Which,
yeah,
trust me, I thought I was, because
yeah,
I was going
yeah.
through all this stuff, right? Like, I definitely thought I was, but it was not the case. And the reason I know it was not the case is because within a year of getting that cleansing, the ritual, my whole life just changed.
Mhm.
And the last bit, I think, that was holding me to that life was that narcissist relationship. And I mention him because he was a huge pivotal point in my life, aside for the ritual. He made me forget who I actually was
Yeah.
through the manipulation, brainwashing, isolation, everything like that, right? Telling me that I could never amount to this, I could never get that done, whatever. And then once I did the cleansing, I got a better job where I
Yep.
was happy and I was making more. And how dare I make more than him,
Oh,
right? I
yeah,
mean,
and
gee,
we will have a full episode on
right.
narcissism because I have been there too, and
Yeah,
that is a
amen.
whole nother
It
topic.
is a whole nother
Yeah.
topic, but imagine being, can't believe that I call it this, but I was first,
Yeah.
a decade.
Yeah.
Like, imagine being possessed and also having an upbringing where you never felt good enough. And
Yep.
then you're in a relationship with somebody who's telling you you're not good enough. And you know what? In
You
your head, you're
believe
like,
it.
you believe it because, well, he can't be wrong because look at my job performance
Yeah.
and look at my relationships and look at all this, right? A, B, C, D, and all the way to Z is in accordance with what they're saying. So it's hard to differentiate what is bullshit and what is not
Yeah.
because you got the evidence, but then my evidence was obviously skewed by my paranormal uh, assistance, right? So, but he was the last piece of the puzzle, and that's why I mentioned him, because once I got rid of him, then fuck, everything changed.
Yeah.
Everything changed. And I had been in a relationship with some normal guys before, but my life was still chaotic. And
Mhm.
that was the entity. So yeah, it was an insane thing to experience. And
Would you mind sharing your experience when you were 9 years old? What happened? I mean, as
yeah,
much as you want to.
yeah. So I grew up in a different country, a country where a Christian Orthodox is the primary religion. And Christian Orthodox people have a tendency of being more God fearing than God praising, right? Like,
Mhm.
if anything happens in your life, oh, that's God punishing you.
Yeah.
So I was raised by my grandma, and my great grandmother was in our apartment with us. And when I was around 6 years old, she started to lose her mind, Alzheimer's, dementia, whatever. Um, so they did not have a good relationship. My grandma hated her for her upbringing.
Mhm.
And looking back on it, obviously this is insane, but being a kid, I didn't realize that this was insane. What she did was she locked her in a room, and
Wow.
she kept her locked up in that room until she died 3 years later. She even put a bucket for her to do her business in and
Wow.
just would never let her out of the house. We lived on a fifth floor, and a lot of times my great grandmother would be found dangling out of the window trying to commit suicide. And it wasn't until our neighbors would start just banging on you know, uh, on our front door, just like, go in there, go in there. She's about to, she's hanging out the window.
Mhm.
And, we'd pull her out and she would say things like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, they're making me. Who's making you? They're making
Yeah.
me. And I was like, as a kid, didn't understand, but looking back, okay,
Now you get it.
now I get it.
Yeah.
Um, and, she was seeing things, she was hearing things, she's got mental problems, but could there be some underlying cause? You never know. But then when I was 9, I sure as fuck figured out that there was something in there.
This shit's real.
And the shit's real. And the reason I say this is because, we had a small apartment, and it was not abnormal for people to share beds, because when you live in small quarters, I mean, that's what you're going to do. So I had started to sleep on my own in the living room, and it was fine for a while. And then my great grandmother took a turn for the worse. And my grandma, being the God fearing woman that she is, was like, okay, we're gonna get holy water. We're gonna go and, pray over her. We're gonna spray the holy water in the corners of the room. So she sent me to do the spraying.
And you're only 6 at
Well,
this
at this
time.
time, I'm almost 9.
Oh,
Yeah,
9,
so it
okay.
started at when I was 6,
Okay.
and the demise was
Okay.
when I was 9.
Yeah.
So over the course of the 3 years. And so I'm in that room and I'm spraying the corners, and I get to the last corner and I don't remember shit. Like I don't remember what happened. So my grandma later told me that I passed out, which is funny to me. Like this is what you call anointing a home, right? You take holy water, you put a cross on every doorway, and I'm a big believer in that. I'm, as you know me, I'm very religious. And so, that was a common practice in the Christian Orthodox community. So I woke up, I was in the living room sleeping the way I do all the time. Something you also should know about me, I'm blind as a fucking bat.
Me
So
too.
I have horrible vision.
Yeah.
And even at 9 years old, I think my vision was probably like around -3. I wore glasses, but I wake up and I don't have my glasses on, and I don't know where they are, and it's dark. I lived in not like a town, right? So I'm on the 5th floor. Whenever there's a main road right next to us, and whenever a car would pass, there's a whole wall of windows. And if you look at like old school homes in Slavic countries, it's all windows, and then there's like a balcony so that you can get some light. So every time a car would pass, the lights would reflect, and you could see the passing lights on the ceiling, whichever way they were going, they would light up the ceiling.
Okay.
So these old Slavic houses, tall ceilings, big chandeliers. That's a thing. And I'm blind as a bat, and I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I'm like, oh, okay, like okay, it's nighttime, all right. And as it keeps, like, the cars keep passing, and I see this darkness in a corner that is darker than a dark itself. And no, I don't see any eyeballs. No, I don't see anything like that. Okay, like let's just get that straight. But it is darker than the dark itself, and that was strange to me. And I kind of got scared because you're 9 years old, you're scared. And so I'm looking at it, and I could not take my eyes off of it. And
Sorry, there's a helicopter in the background.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at it, and it is darker than the dark itself, and I'm scared at this point because I don't know what I'm seeing. I don't know what I'm looking at. And I kept my eyes on it, and every time a car would pass, it would move a little bit. Like I could see it was not in the same place. And we had
like a dark shadow,
just a darkness, like a super dark darkness. And it was in the corner where there was up against the wall, we had like a bookcase, like a really long, like a library in our living room. And it started to move along it, so you could see where the wall was darker from the corner, whereas the corner was darker before. And it kept moving, and then I really was like pissing myself, and then the thing started moving towards the chandelier, and this is like a crystal, like fancy fucking thing, and there's no air conditioning. This is the middle of fucking winter. Okay, we have Slavic people, they tape up their windows to keep the heat, because we have like the old school radiators.
Yeah, so the chandelier starts moving.
The chandelier starts tinkling, like the little crystal. So I'm saying that because I know there's no wind.
Yeah.
There's no airflow at all. There's no fan. There's no nothing. This is an old school fucking building. There's nothing moving it except for this shadow. And it is on the chandelier. It is dark only on the chandelier. The corner is normal now. The side of the wall above the bookcase is normal. So I know that this is a moving thing.
It's like coming towards you.
It's coming towards me.
My
and the
gosh.
second that I'm starting to hear the chandelier and the car passes again, and I see it there, I got that rush of fear. And I'm sure we all know what I'm talking about. When you get scared, you get this like, oh, and like you get the hairs standing up. The panic, the hairs in the back of your neck stand up, and you're just like, fuck, something's happening, right? But I felt it in my feet. And now I'm too scared to poke my head out, and sit up and look, but my feet are hot, and it's starting to travel up my feet, and I feel it traveling up my feet. And I kind of moved my feet, and it would not go away. And the thing is getting closer. It's like it's moving down the chandelier at me, and and I started screaming.
And you're 9 years old.
I'm 9
and
years
what
old.
the fuck
I'm
is going on?
screaming my fucking head off. And the reason I bring up the radiators also, in old buildings, these pipes are connected throughout all the floors. There's 12 floors in this building. All 12 floors are connected with the same pipe, same radiator. So if somebody's being loud, banging on the radiator, it's going to tell them to shut the fuck up.
Okay.
Right. So if I ever played piano too late practicing, right, people will start
People
banging on the
would bang on,
radiators.
yeah.
You're like, okay, I'm done. Okay, I'm closing it. Marla, sorry. So people started banging on the radiators within like 10 minutes of me screaming. But that's a long time to scream for
Yeah.
a kid. I mean, that feels like a fucking eternity because I don't know where my glasses are. I'm pissing myself.
Yeah.
I'm covered in sweat. My feet are hot from what? I don't know. And this thing is moving at me. And the chandelier is right above. It's a pull-out couch, right? So my grandma made the pull-out couch and
Okay.
I'm laying at the chandelier was right above me. And my grandma doesn't fucking hear me. And
Oh.
she's like in the farthest part of the apartment. This is not a giant apartment, but it's like steel fucking wall. You can't hear shit.
Yeah.
It's cement. And there's a light switch that's kind of near me, but like I would have to get out from under the blanket to move it. And so finally, when I feel like I have no time, and the reason I felt like I had no time because it was close enough now that I felt like I could see a face. That's where,
Wow.
like, again, do not know if I'm actually looking at a face.
Yeah.
I'm blind, but I feel like I'm looking and the darkness is looking back at me. So the people are banging on the radiators, the thing is like feet away from my face. I don't know where my glasses are, and I know where the light switch is because there's a desk right there. And I pray and I turn the light switch on, and there was a moment where the light flooded and it was still there. Like tiny millisecond when it was still there. And then I see my glasses on the desk and I grab them and I booked it down the hallway. And I show up to my grandma and I'm like shaking her awake. This woman like probably had a heart attack. And she's like, what's going on? What's going on? And she turns the lights on and she's like, oh my God, you're drenched in sweat. She's like, oh, you're
What do you
pale as a
say
ghost.
to her in that moment?
Right. Like, and I started rambling and telling her what I was seeing. And she's, oh no, it's okay. You're just dreaming.
Yeah.
Because of course, that's what people are going to say to a 9-year-old who's fucking picking herself there.
Yeah.
And, so I slept the rest of the night with my grandma. And then within a few days of that happening, we sent my great grandmother to hospice. Now, when you picture hospice in America, you're taken care of. You're people one-on-one, whatever. Like there's nicer options for that. You sent somebody to hospice in Slavic countries back in the 90s. It's guaranteed death. So we sent her there because we can take care of her anymore. And we show up a couple of days later, she is in a diaper and she's eating her own feces. What? And they said, we don't know what else to do. Like, she's not just eating the feces, she's eating the innards of the diaper, like the stuff that, holds the pee, like the.
Yeah.
And they're like, at this rate, like we don't know, she's going on herself. She has to have a diaper. We don't know what else to do, but this is going to accelerate the process. So we just kind of started making arrangements and things like that, right? And sure shit, within a few days, she was dead. And we were on our way to visit her, and we show up at the hospice, and they're like, "Oh yeah, she's passed." And they were just so nonchalant about it. And then, we get back home, and there's a message on our like tape, the old school phones are like that. And like, yeah, we just wanted to inform you that she had passed. So she passed while we were on the train to come and see her. And, after that, there's a few rituals that you do. You cover up mirrors so that the dead know that they're dead. And you put a piece of rye bread on top of a shot of vodka. And the vodka deteriorates or evaporates over time. And then when it does, the piece of bread breaks in half. And that's how you know the spirit has left.
Interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, so that's a Christian Orthodox thing. And so we did that, and we had everything covered up, and then you do the funeral, the everything. And I wasn't allowed to go because they didn't want me to, to get traumatized. But then I moved into her room, and it was just abysmal in there. And it took a while before I felt comfortable, but honestly, I don't think I ever was 100% comfortable there. And then about 3 years later, I moved to America. So, but things were really going downhill.
So did you ever talk to people about this, or was it something you just kind of swept under the rug
I
and,
had to. I had
yeah,
to because
you didn't have anybody to talk to about
no,
it?
no. But then every time we go to church, I would feel uncomfortable in church.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't explain it. Like I just felt like I was crawling out of my skin. Like
Yeah.
there was something there. And when I finally moved to America, like I felt lighter. Like I
Yeah.
just felt like whatever was there, it went away. And the weird things, we still have this apartment in Soviet era. When you're given an apartment, you keep it for
Mm-hmm.
fucking forever. It's in your family. So my grandma stayed there. God bless her soul. She passed in this past November, and then my uncle and his wife and daughter moved in there.
Okay.
And from what I know, there was always chaos in that house. And my
Mm.
grandmother just became such a bitter woman. And just everything was drama, everything was fighting and
Mm.
negative, nasty. So I think that whatever is there, hopefully it left with her. I don't know if it was from her. I don't know what. I don't know anything. All I know is that I pray that my uncle and his wife and family are safe and not going to be affected by this thing, because it was not a good place to be. So
Yeah.
I never really was able to talk to anybody. It's not something, they send you to therapy. That's not a thing. Okay.
Yeah.
In those countries. And you just kind of have to keep moving forward.
I think that's why it's so important. That's why I'm so passionate about doing these podcasts, is because of how important it is that people share their stories and help,
Agreed.
let them know that they're not alone. I remember when I started my spiritual journey, or right before I really started my spiritual journey, I had dealt with a couple episodes of sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
And
Scary shit.
yeah. And,
Mm-hmm.
when I started this journey, it's like I didn't have anybody to talk to at that time. I was kind of just going solo and, having these experiences. And I had it happen 3 different times. And the first 2 times it was, you know, yeah, terrifying, but nothing like the third time. And the third time, I literally felt like something stuck its tongue in my mouth. I was frozen. I couldn't
Horrific.
move. And the next day I was like, how the hell do I even talk to anybody about this?
Right.
They're going to think I'm fucking crazy.
Exactly.
And so I did. I mean, besides telling like 1 or 2 people, it wasn't until like a year later that I came across, I think it was like a podcast episode or something where somebody was discussing it, how that happens. And that I've always been somebody who is all about love and light. And, people will be like, oh, you and your woo woo. And,
Yes.
yes,
I
there's.
feel that way about you sometimes.
Yeah, right? I know. I'm all about, just what you put out, you get back. And I never really had learned about the dark stuff.
Yeah, and I think you and I are in the same boat there. And so two things happened. First of all, I got freakishly into like paranormal stuff, right? Because I thought, and the answers that I was seeking lie somewhere
Yeah.
in these programs, not movies, Hollywood, fuck Hollywood,
Yeah.
but like stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my answers also lay in the conversations people have about this stuff, which was not very ubiquitous, we'll say,
Yeah.
right? Like, so then social media became big, right? And then Instagram, people would, read other people's submissions,
Mm-hmm.
and you never know what's embellished, you never know what's not, right? So it's hard to be like, okay, well, this person had the exact same experience. How do I know they're telling the truth?
Yeah.
How do we know it's not for clicks, whatever? But I was like, I have to believe if I want to get answers of my own. So it took me a really long time to put together several, places where I felt I could go and listen to this. And what you experienced, you also don't know who to talk to, because same thing here.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell somebody, oh, she's looking nuts. Okay.
Yeah.
Like here's a pill for that.
Yeah.
Because that's, the society these days. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be, I'm not crazy. I'm capable. I'm bright. I'm smart. Like, I just need a way to get rid of this, to fix
Yeah.
it. And where do you start, right? So luckily with my story, right,
Mhm.
I came across by chance, and I think that's what everything happens for a reason, right?
Yep.
Nothing is a coincidence. I met the only person who asked me if I was okay that day, who I happened to share my story, was Wiccan.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I am a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your textbook, everything. I don't talk about the way you do about the universe. I talk about
Yeah.
God. I talk right. So you and I have a different system of beliefs. However, at the core, it's
It's just
it's sim-
believing in a higher power. I tell everybody,
right,
whether you call it God, the universe, the cosmos, it's just believing in a higher power, you know?
right. And so where you and I separate is I'm God,
Yeah.
you're universe,
Yep.
right? So for me, it's God, and I believe that. Like a part of me felt guilty that I turned to Wiccans for this help.
Mm-hmm.
Did it help? Sure. But I did turn to the church, and I felt, and this is where, like, I understand why people like have a certain stigma against Christians, because
Mm-hmm.
what what is said in the Bible and what some of these Christians preach is two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jesus wouldn't do that, right? If your whole religion is based on be like Jesus, well, some of them are not. So I turned to church. It was the closest thing that I could bike to. I didn't drive at the time because of the seizures.
Yeah.
And I came across this church, and I went and, I'm sorry, a church store. And they told me, here's a church to go to. Here's a Bible, read
Mm-hmm.
it. And they were super nice. They gave it to me for free. And because I think this woman saw what I was looking like and acting like. And I did go to the church, and I felt very free when I was
Mm-hmm.
inside, and they would sing the songs, and I would literally just bawl my eyes out, and it
Mm.
was lovely. But then I went enough, and I was like, okay, maybe I can talk to somebody there and to tell them what's going on. So I did, and they were super supportive, and they were like, okay, well, let us come over to your house and see what's going on. So I had this tapestry that was the Om sign, like in
Yeah.
geometrical patterns. I never thought about it as from a religious aspect. I just thought it was a beautiful tapestry, and it worked with my everything. And the first thing that they said, they're like, remove any of these objects. And they're like, they're not going to help you. I was like, well, this is just a tapestry, right? Looking back, I understand where they were
Yeah.
coming from. At the time, I did not. So they said, remove anything that has nothing to do with God, and be about it, and then you will see your life change.
Mm.
I didn't believe that at the time because I wasn't educated enough on it. But looking back, I understand what they're talking about now. So I have done that, and honestly, but this kind of shit just doesn't plague me anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and when it does, it is because of a whole different situation
Yeah.
that I see and hear. I'm sorry, not see. I don't really see that. I hear and feel things, but that is fine.
Yeah, and knowing how to protect your energy. And
Correct.
I am huge on self-help and being the best version of yourself. And it's very important to, we talk about this all the time. Like, our thoughts are so freaking powerful.
Oh
And when
yeah,
you focus on something, you attract more of it. So if you're in a fear base all the time, you're going to attract that. And
correct.
it's just learning how to navigate through a lot of this stuff too. And so, like you said earlier, like, if you are experiencing anything like this or similar to this, we do advise you to seek help or talk to somebody who,
Because you can now,
yeah,
right? People,
yeah.
it's more wide known.
Yes, and that's the way I've always been too. I mean, I got in so much trouble growing up, and it all makes sense to me now. Like, I am somebody who likes to do things differently. I've always had a problem with authority and being told, what to do. And I don't know. I think that's why I'm meant to do this and help people know that it's okay to talk about these things, and getting to that point of not caring if somebody's going to think you're schizo, or,
Right.
like, you're going to attract the right people as you raise your vibration. My
Correct.
circle of friends has changed a lot over the years, and it just keeps getting better and better because as I'm raising my vibration, I'm attracting like-minded individuals into my
Correct.
life. And it just feels good to know that you have a really good, close knit group of people who can hear you and believe you and understand you. And there's so many people out there who feel alone or, feel like they're going crazy. And so hearing your story, there could be somebody out there who is having similar experiences.
There could be, and honestly, okay, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a
Yeah.
psychiatrist, I'm not out here trying to give medical advice. However, based on my own experience, if you are going through anything like this, here's the pattern. It can prey on you if you A, allow it to, and B, if you're in a position in life where you are so beat down by life that you are an easy target, right? Because weak people are an easy target, whether it's for entities or for other people who tend to abuse people, right?
Yeah.
The weaker you are, the more likely you are about to get bombarded by this stuff, right? So I find that whenever I introduce things like medications or weed or copious amounts of alcohol, we'll call it that, right? Like a shot won't do anything, but like if you're under the influence in any way, that can kind of erase the barrier that the strength in your mind can create against these things, right? So what I noticed that again, whenever I would smoke, it was like I like the veil was brought down. It was I was more likely to be attacked. I was more likely to experience what you experienced, like the uh witch on your back, they call it. What is it?
The what?
They call it witch on your back.
The curse?
No, the paralysis.
Oh, sleep paralysis.
Yes, sleep paralysis.
Yeah,
So
okay.
sleep paralysis is called having the witch on your back.
Oh, I
right.
never heard
So
that.
it's like in folklore they describe it as that there's an entity sitting on you, and it is controlling your body, mind, spirit, and it can do whatever it wants to you. Right. So, and there are entities like succubi and incubi who then also are able to manipulate your emotions to do whatever they wish to do with you, in order to gain control over your body and the things that you can do for them.
Which was recently and this is a whole nother thing, but somebody recently tried to do that where the spirit was trying to get inside my body and control me. And we'll talk about that later, but continue.
Exactly. And whether somebody sent it to you or it just arrives on its own because it smelled your weakness or whatever it is, right?
It doesn't even just have to be weakness, like it could be because your light is so bright. It
can be either or. Exactly. Like the way narcissists are typically attracted to people who are super vibrant and empaths, exactly, because then they can turn your empathy against you. Right. So, and the more supply that they have, like if you're super ambitious and you're a fighter, they know that they can get supply from you for longer because they can keep you fighting for this relationship that is not going anywhere. Right. But so, and then you turn weak, and then that's where that kind of shit can attack, right? So it's all about energy. It's all about what it wants from you, what it can take from you, right? And if it wants to possess you, it's easier to do so if you're just fucking broken. But that kind of stuff takes time, right? That's why they whittle you down. And so what I was going to say was, medications are big pharma is fucking down everybody's throats. Everywhere you look, oh, can't sleep, here's a pill.
Yeah,
oh,
instead
you can't
of getting to the
focus?
root of the problem, why can't you sleep?
Exactly. Why can't you? Right? Nobody cares because the way they make money. That's what it's all about, right? The way they make money is here's a pill. I'm gonna get a fucking bonus from giving you this medication, right? Because it's all about self-interest. It's not about curing you.
They're not here to help anybody.
They're not. And the problem is that the more medications you take, the more likely I feel you are to become susceptible to this shit, because that's my personal experience. Again, speaking just from personal, right? But I felt like the veil was very thin when I was medicated, and I did not wean myself off of them properly, which I kind of touch on in my story. I was on 6 different meds and I flushed them down the toilet.
Wow.
And it caused me to have seizures for better half of almost a decade.
Yeah.
And I couldn't drive. I couldn't, you have to have 3 years of no seizures in order to be able to do so. So that kind of stuff was happening. And I learned that when I got off the meds, I stopped smoking. I stopped getting drunk. Like I'm going to enjoy a drink or two, but the more under the influence I am, the more likely I am to experience this stuff. So if it plagues you, try it.
Yeah.
Try getting clean, and be intentional about it, because if you want to be helped, I think that's a good start.
Absolutely.
And whether you want to turn to the universe, whether you want to talk to God, to Jesus Christ, you can do either or. Go with what feels best.
Yeah, use your intuition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So use your intuition.
That's what we're all about at Mystic Movement. We have several healers that would be more than happy to talk to you. We are a community of like-minded individuals that just, we care about each other and aim to be the best versions of ourselves. And when you really start healing yourself, you are healing your parents and your grandparents and generation after generation. So, yeah.
And you're breaking the cycle
Yeah,
as
you are
well for the
breaking the
future.
cycle. And is it a lot of work? Yeah, I know that I'm the black sheep in the family. I'm meant to break the
Same.
cycle, but I can tell you one thing, that when I really started working on myself, that is when my whole family changed. My
Mhm.
relationships with my siblings or my parents. And it's so rewarding. And I wouldn't do it any differently. I love it and I'll continue to do it forever. And that's what I'm here to help others do too, because it's just changed my life for the better in so many ways. And yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
I know that we will definitely be bringing you on several more times to talk about
We're gonna have to
so
discuss.
many different things. So thank you all for listening. Please let us know any topics that you'd be interested in us talking about. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you guys for listening.